but Jonathan, the guy in the movie, is utterly forgettable, probably because the script called for him to just be another bumbling man who learns the error of his ways thanks to Snow White's brilliance.
There's this sort of poppy, belty loudness that every single female character gets of, I have this dream of being bigger and being a leader and dominating everything, and something's holding me down and making sure that I cannot do it, so I must sing with all my loudness and all my girl bossery to let the world know how powerful I actually am.
And I thought that that was really sad because what Disney did was they eliminated the necessity of the man.
Welcome to Manosphere Highlights Daily. So, the Snow White remake bombed hard, and now everybody and their mother is talking about it. But why does the Manosphere need to weigh in? Simple, because Hollywood didn't just remake Snow White, they turned it into a feminist manifesto, dunked on men, and thought that would be a recipe for success. Genius move, right? But here's the twist. Women are calling it out. Yes, even the ladies have had enough of this foolishness. So, we put together a highlight reel of women exposing the politics, the feminism, the boss babe delusions, and the complete lack of a male hero in this train wreck of a movie. You can find the links to the full videos in the description. Grab your popcorn, this one is gonna be good. Let's get this highlight reel started! Ain't that a man?
So, right out of the gate, it's important for you all to understand that Disney didn't remake Snow White. They made two different films, mashed them together, and called it Snow White.
What they tried to do here for this new one was completely rewrite the original tale, basically. So they're adding all of these like new plot elements and like backstory. Obviously, they always do that. And so there are naturally all of these added motivation.
Need I remind you that the 1937 original is 83 minutes long. It is a simple story, we all know it. It's a love story, it's good conquers evil, it's cute, it's a classic, that's it.
Rather than continue cashing in on nostalgia with its live-action remakes, it stripped away the very charm that fans loved by making excessive and often unnecessary changes, many of which felt more political than purposeful.
Because they absolutely did run in the direction of creating a new feminist utopian landscape in this 2025 Snow White.
Some of the language around this is so direct that it feels like it got pulled right out of the Communist Manifesto. This fairly blunt political messaging is awkwardly woven throughout what should have been a regular, enjoyable fairy tale about a girl and a bunch of dwarves, but instead, we're partially given a story about equity and how taxing people too much makes the background dreary.
But the script is basically Snow White in name only.
And it's weird because this film seems to reject the core themes of the original to such a degree that I just don't understand the point of it. It's like, why remake this particular tale? If you don't even like the original, it's like, how can you even begin to honor it?
And just a reminder, Disney spent $270 million on this film.
$270 million on this movie. Like I always say, these aren't just movies. The Snow White remake had a clear purpose. This is an agenda-pushing reboot, not a tribute. And why? Because they know the best way to change the future is to control what kids see today. Give me a child until he is 7, and I will show you the man. They know exactly what they are doing.
Again, it's boring to me. And I guess I just don't understand the cynicism or the problem with the original film. It's like it feels as if there's such a desperation to shield the children from gasp. The idea that Snow White as a character is meant to represent purity and femininity and youth. It's like, how dare they?
Unlike some of the other Disney princesses like Mulan or Belle, Snow White was never supposed to be some independent, freedom-fighting girl boss. Her depiction was one of innocence, purity, and a beauty that shines very brightly from within. Our 1937 Snow White is endeared to us because of her gentleness, generosity, and trusting nature. It also causes those around her to act protectively, which is crucial to the storyline. But those endearing traits also serve as a very obvious flaw that others seek to exploit. And although the original animation was short, it still was packed with meaning and moral. The 2025 adaptation, on the other hand, wrapped all of this up with cannonballs and threw it into the ocean.
But can we just be honest, okay? She was a very poor casting choice. Take away the fact that they did a race swap. We're going to completely ignore that. She doesn't embody the essence of Snow White. The original Snow White is very dainty, very feminine. She has plump cheeks, giving her a very soft appearance. And Rachel Zegler is the exact opposite. And that's not a diss to Rachel Zegler, it's just true. Casting Rachel Zegler to play Snow White is the equivalent of casting Kristen Stewart to play Barbie. It's just not believable.
Inspiring as the writers probably hoped she would, she instead seems entitled and annoying. Very on brand for Rachel Zegler.
Weird.
Acting can only compensate for so much, no matter how talented you are. If your physical appearance is too far in contrast with the character, it just won't be believable. That is why typecasting exists. Mads Mikkelsen plays a villain 99% of the time because he looks like one. And Rachel Zegler just doesn't have the demeanor, the physical appearance, nor the charm to convincingly play Snow White. And to be honest, she kind of looks like a mean girl. And while promoting the movie, she came across as one.
Of course, Rachel Zegler went wickedly viral after talking about Snow White and really looking down upon the original 1937 version of the film. And she said this when being interviewed.
No longer 1937.
She's not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be, and the leader that her late father told her that she could be if she was fearless, fair, brave, and true. The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird. So we didn't do that this time.
No.
I was scared of the original cartoon. I think I watched it once and then I never picked it up again. I watched it for the first time in probably 16, 17 years. The cartoon was made 85 years ago, and therefore it's extremely dated when it comes to the ideas of women being in roles of power. No longer.
Okay, so we could have used a little bit of PR training, but knowing Disney, maybe that was her PR training. Maybe she was told to go out there and shit on the 1937 version before releasing this new version.
These are the cues I want you to pay attention to. If there is a $270 million budget, the last thing you want is your main actor not promoting the movie the way you want it to be promoted. Always follow the money, guys. Contracts are signed, PR teams are involved, and studios don't gamble on actors who go rogue. Unless, of course, the message she's pushing is exactly what they wanted all along. You think Disney accidentally let Rachel Zegler run her freaking mouth? Nah, this was by design.
One of the moments that really irritated me personally early on is when Snow White finds her love interest, Jonathan the Bandit, stealing potatoes from the castle. Yes, they eliminated the prince and replaced him with Jonathan, who coincidentally is the only person in this entire movie who actually has a consistent character and can apparently act. So, there's that. Do with that what you will.
And I do feel sad that over and over, particularly in these modern Disney movies, it's like, for young boys, they don't have a heroic male figure to look up to anymore the way that young girls do. The male lead in this movie, he's a klutz and he keeps getting captured and caught. And again, I don't know, this movie feels like a weird mishmash of like the original Snow White if you stripped it of everything interesting mixed with like a second-rate Frozen.
Other performances are honestly pretty f***ing forgettable. Andrew Burnap, who plays the guy in the movie because he's not a prince, and Rachel Zegler so eloquently referred to him as the guy in the movie. So we're gonna go ahead and call him that.
I'll assume is a love story just because we cast a guy in the movie. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut, who knows?
The character's name is actually Jonathan, but Jonathan, the guy in the movie, is utterly forgettable, probably because the script called for him to just be another bumbling man who learns the error of his ways thanks to Snow White's brilliance.
And she goes out into the woods and she meets her love interest once again. And of course, her Prince Charming, as I said, is not a prince. He's just this revolutionary. And you know how they fall in love and how they start to spark up a little bit of charming chemistry? He belittles her, demeans her, and reminds her that she has a ton of privilege by singing a song to her about her princess problems. So he essentially says, you don't know what the real world is like. You've been living in a castle. You've had this cute, privileged life. I know what the real world's like as a revolutionary who's working to battle this evil queen. And Snow White's like, ooh, okay. I love that. I love when a man belittles me.
even though they made the prince, the guy in the movie Jonathan the Not Prince, the bandit, and then they made him kind of a useless idiot who needed to get saved on no less than 3 occasions. There is still a love story there.
But Disney didn't make space for a future king. Like, it was so weird, guys, because she has this love interest. He actually kisses her. He saves her life. He actually saves her life twice, right? And she kind of inspires him to greatness. And then in the final scene of the movie, or one of the final scenes, she goes out alone to challenge the evil queen. She alone inspires the townspeople to kind of take back their town or their kingdom. And then where is he? He's kind of like off to the side being, I guess a tough guy. And then in the very final scene, Snow White is singing as like the leader of the kingdom. And he's kind of next to her, but he's dancing with a bunch of other people. And it's like, where's your prince, Snow White? Like, where's your king? Where's your husband? And I thought that was really sad because what Disney did was they eliminated the necessity of the man.
This is pure gold. Disney eliminated the necessity of the man. And they wonder why young men come to this space. And this is where we get into the deeper aspect of the agenda, which is to destroy the family. This is why modern Hollywood keeps pushing these strong, independent woman narratives while erasing traditional relationships. Because if men and women don't need each other, there's no family unit. And if there's no family unit, there's no structure. And guess what? A society without structure is way easier to control. Let's take it a step further.
They just eliminated it. And in the original fairy tale, there was a necessary man and a necessary woman who would form a necessary family that would then lead the kingdom into the future. And in the live action Disney remake, the man wasn't necessary. He kind of was. He was a romantic interest. He did save her life. But in the end, when it came to actually ruling the kingdom and actually taking it back from the evil queen, he was kind of the side character. And I thought that was really sad to see because the reality is Snow White can't lead that kingdom by herself. I mean, maybe she could for a few years, but she is not going to be able to have a family by herself. There's no heir apparent to the throne by herself. And a queen is meant to lead alongside a king. And the king is meant to ultimately be the lead of the kingdom with the queen, closely by his side. But that king, that father that she loved, that was killed, she was kind of replacing him, but there was no family. There was no other king to step up alongside of her. And I think that was a huge missed opportunity for the film.
See what she just did? She went a little deeper than, and they lived happily ever after. Life doesn't just stop after you beat the final boss. This is where the depression and disappointments comes in. Because feminism promised women freedom and empowerment, but left out the part where happily ever after actually requires a man, a family, and a purpose beyond a career and girl boss slogans. Now, instead of fulfillment, you get loneliness and regret.
And this brings me to one of the biggest issues I have with this movie. In order to make all of the aforementioned plot additions and themes make sense, this movie needed to massacre Snow White's personality, and instead reimagine her as a girl boss, a revolutionary figure who could save her kingdom.
And Snow White, of course, she's a Mary Sue archetype who kind of slays her way through this entire movie, relatively unscathed until the end of it. Again, she has no flaws, she learns very little. It's a telegraphed arc.
But I think is the ultimate message to a young girl, you're going to be a leader, or is the ultimate message to the young girl, you're going to be, you're made for love, right? To love and to be loved.
And you'll see what she sounds like. She sounds beautiful, but there's something here.
Here's let it echo, 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 echo. Your voice will carry through.
But is that what Snow White is supposed to sound like? Now, I'm going to play you a small clip from the 1937 version of Snow White, and you let me know what you hear, okay?
And all because I was afraid. I'm so ashamed of the fuss I've made.
Okay, there you go. You hear that? It's soft. The word demure keeps coming up, but that's literally what I'm thinking of every time I think of the 1937 version of Snow White. Very soft, very feminine, very light, very airy, very wispy. And Rachel Zegler is doing this echo, echo, just like loud, belty, and that's what you get when you turn this very cutesy character into a feminist girl boss. It becomes loud and brash and belty, and while it sounds good for Rachel Zegler to do that, it does not sound like Snow White to me whatsoever. But we've abandoned what Snow White was meant to be, and I find that with a lot of these Disney remakes and live actions and a lot of the princesses that they make these days, and just Disney films in general, there's this sort of poppy, belty loudness that every single female character gets of, I have this dream of being bigger and being a leader and dominating everything, and something's holding me down and making sure that I cannot do it, so I must sing with all my loudness and all my girl bossery to let the world know how powerful I actually am.
A couple of the other lines that just kind of came back again and again that I didn't like was this thing like, I'm no longer going to be, or the line exactly was, time to lead and not be led. The Snow White, time to lead and not be led. And that was like kind of like, Snow White, I'm going to be a leader. I'm going to be a leader, right? And it's like, okay, yeah, I mean, yes, be a leader, especially if you're up against an evil stepmother and your father's missing, and he's gone, he's been killed, you don't know where he is, and you need to stand up to injustice. Yes, be a leader in that sense. But I mean, the ultimate sense is the ultimate calling to be a leader, or is the ultimate calling to be a lover, right?
Yeah, I mean, Snow White is the girl you remember, but she's definitely made for the modern age, and there's such an emphasis on what it really means to be the fairest of them all. And for Snow White, it's coming to terms with finding herself and finding her inner voice and finding a sense of agency so that she can be a just ruler and a wonderful queen.
The problem is that the writers seemingly couldn't fully commit to this murder. So instead of an empowered feminist girl boss, we are given a Frankenstein monster of a character who spends most of the film oscillating between looking doe-eyed and jutting out her bottom jaw in an effort to look innocent, while doing things that scream exactly the opposite.
And I was so baffled by what happens when she arrives at the dwarves' cottage, because in the original Snow White, she gets there, and while she does sleep in their beds, she cleans up, she cooks, and it becomes a reciprocal thing. Hey, thanks for letting me crash here. I got dinner covered, and I'm gonna make sure the floor's clean. But in this one, Snow White literally imposes order, gives every dwarf a tool, and then sends them on their way to clean the house, and all she does is prance around and sing whistle while you work. And occasionally she'll grab something and look like she's about to do something, but she just hands it off to someone else.
Not only am I going to stay in your house, which I trespassed into and slept in one of your beds, but you guys are gonna get up and clean this shit up.
They lead her to the dwarves' house, where she hesitantly knocks on the door and eventually enters, asking if she can come in. Our 2025 Snow White just waltzes right in, asks if anyone's home, and then goes to sleep in beds upstairs.
It completely misses the characterization and fundamentally misunderstands the point of Snow White. See, there wasn't a weakness in this act of kindness, and there's nothing shameful about a woman cleaning up. She was repaying a favor. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. To show our princess, and our heroine in this case, cleaning up wouldn't be shameful. It would show that she understands reciprocation and believes in fairness and kindness.
But the film wanted to maintain this air of innocence and purity, which makes her entire personality feel extremely inconsistent and confusing.
The hypocrisy of being independent, but still making others do the work. This is pure solipsism. It's not about equality, it's about superiority. Modern feminism teaches women they can have it all without giving anything in return. And when reality doesn't match the fantasy, they blame men instead of their own contradictions. This is why men are tired of the modern woman. Because what exactly are the benefits? Feminism rejected 1937 femininity, but instead of offering something better, it brought confusion and contradiction in return. Men used to get a woman who valued being a wife, support, and grace. Now, they get a woman who says she doesn't need a man, but still expects one to pay the bills, protect her, and do the heavy lifting whenever it's convenient. She wants traditional benefits without traditional responsibilities. That's not progress. That's a scam. So why would a man sign up for a deal where he gets more demands but fewer rewards? This is why modern dating is broken.
Really made me sad, honestly, in the end. And I thought, okay, well, they were so close. You know, they were almost there. But, you know, is it woke ideology? Is it modern feminism? Is it just postmodern, radical, self-independence, autonomy, I don't need other people thing going on? You could blame different ideologies for what happened at the end of Snow White. And I do think modern feminism, one of their big mistakes is that for women, it's all about autonomy and our own self-actualization, completely untethered from relationship. When women are designed to be in relationship, certainly with men, I mean, they are our counterpart. They are who we need to, if we're going to marry, they are our husband, potentially, right? And then also from children, you know, the ability to mother is obviously seen by modern feminism as this thing that is kind of a shackle. It kind of is this burden, right? And so you need to be equal to men, which is why you need abortion, so that if you get pregnant, you don't have to have the baby, right? That's the whole modern feminist ideology.
Least. But hey, that just seems to be the way the cookie crumbles. Maybe Disney will wake up, stop trying to influence people with politics in their films, and will focus on just making a good film with a good storyline, even if it means the young female protagonist is not a girl boss and is actually feminine and strong. Maybe we could have done that. Maybe we could have looked at the 1937 version of Snow White and thought to ourselves, why was it so successful? And how do we build on that success and make something even better than what we had in 1937? Instead, Disney said no. The 1937 version of this film was successful for the wrong reasons. It's built on old school stereotypes and traditional thinking and gender roles, and we must burn that to the ground and build upon it a utopian communist society where everybody shares their apples and cherries and potatoes.
Manosphere, we working. Protect yourself at all times. This video has officially been highlighted.